out with the cool guise of New Jack Swing and in with the contemporary alternative sounds of 90s R&B during a time when the genres were shifting more than Earth's Platonic plates. The birth of a distinct sound came about in 1995 when D'Angelo dropped his chart-shattering album Brown Sugar, infusing the likes of Prince with a 70s soulful groove inspired by the likes of Marvin Gaye. D'Angelo, unbeknownst to him, set out to do what no other man had ever done before. But little did he know he'd pioneer an entire genre known as the neo-soul movement. After dropping a few albums, D'Angelo eventually took what felt like a permanent hiatus, disappearing out of the spotlight for almost 2 whole decades, before resurrecting in recent years, making the fans wonder whatever happened to the uncertified king of neo-soul. Word on the street is when Adina Howard was singing about needing a roughneck ninja to satisfy her, she was talking about good old Angelo. Or maybe not. His rugged image meshed with his soulful sound may have seemed a bit confusing in the beginning, yet his music nevertheless blended effortlessly with the overall mystique D'Angelo had strived for. Mystique he'd so desperately wished to achieve after the release of his debut and the albums that followed. Born to a preacher father and jazz enthusiast mother, D'Angelo's love of music is undoubtedly dwelled in his DNA. His skillful piano key playing was pinpointed by his brother when D'Angelo was just a toddler, and at that point it was evident that music was something D'Angelo, born Michael Eugene Archer, was set to do. It wouldn't be till he get a little older that he, along with his boys, formed Michael Archer and Precise, a rap trio. Stepping out of his comfort zone of Richmond, Virginia, into New York's chaotic atmosphere and into the Apollo Theater located in Harlem was where Michael Archer and Precise would be given the opportunity to showcase their talents. In the beginning, it was a little shaky, dog, in my Randy Jackson voice. The crowd had booed D'Angelo and his gang before the clique even got the chance to rub the iconic tree stump of hope or even step foot onto the theater's main stage. Forget all that noise because the cackles and boos didn't stop the guys from going out and giving it their best shot, ultimately winning over the audience by the end of their performance that was met with a swarm of applause immediately after. Third place set the group apart from the rest, but that wouldn't deter them nonetheless. They'd boldly go back on the Apollo over and over and over again. Luckily for them, crowd absolutely loved them, and they did win first place back to back to back. The 3 W's were nice and all, but D'Angelo wanted more than that. Winning a $500 check and a bus ride back to his home base, he'd gather up his funds and buy himself a 4-track and a microphone. Eventually dropping his 3-man crew, a now solo D'Angelo would venture out to find his way into his preferred career of choice, industry. 2 years after performing at the Apollo on amateur night, a 20-year-old D'Angelo was now signed to a recording contract after coming across Afro-punk festival partner Jocelyn Cooper after a 3-hour showcase. His first significant success came about with his single, You Will Know, that he'd originally co-write and produce for the group Black Men United, consisting of artists Usher, Boyz II Men, and more for the film Jason's Lyric. The song, without question, helped place D'Angelo on the music map, and soon enough, he'd hit us with one of music's most iconic albums of all time. Brown Sugar was a moment for the books as it set itself apart from others like it during a time when Keith Sweat's baby-making tunes and Boyz II Men's ballads were taking over like ants on a popsicle left on the sidewalk in the summer. The writing process had taken place before he'd even been signed, way back when at his mother's house in Richmond at the age of 16. He'd utilized vintage equipment that included Wurlitzer musical instruments and dated effect boxes, modern electronic devices, drum machines, and computers. Infusing the sounds of contemporary R&B and hip-hop, D'Angelo created a stylistic, soulful, and unique sound for the overall album that went on to be chef's kisses. Although most of Brown Sugar consists of romance and love bops, an underlying jazzy, soulful, funky pop, Afro-esque sprinkled with a whole bunch of other adjectives would emerge, ultimately creating the distinct sound that would later be coined by record producer Kedar Massenberg as neo-soul. Teaming up with Ali Shaheed Muhammad from the group A Tribe Called Quest, they came up with a title track and song of the same name, Brown Sugar, in as little as 30 minutes. With the help of its 4 lead singles, Brown Sugar, Lady, All Right, and Higher, Brown Sugar spent a total of 34 weeks on the charts and 65 weeks on Billboard's Hot 200, peaking at number 22 and selling over 300,000 copies within the first 2 months of its release and over 500,000 copies by January of 1996. Ali Muhammad's title track Brown Sugar set the tone for the rest of the album. Despite what you may have thought, although it may sound as though D'Angelo is yearning for a pretty brown thing in a jazz club setting, the double meaning of its lyrics add the extra razzle-dazzle to its old school meets timeless 90s appeal. Was he talking about a gorgeous black shorty or a thick hit of Mary Jane? Both? The world may truly never know. We do know, however, that it was nominated for a Grammy for Best Male R&B Vocal Performance as well as Best R&B Song, with the album itself nominated for Best R&B Album. A hint of Southern church music sprinkled on top of jazzy hip-hop beats made for the kids who grew up listening to the gritty soundscapes of rap producers like the Bomb Squad have no issue digesting the vibes of Norman Whitfield, Marvin Gaye, and Curtis Mayfield. The biggest hit on the album, however, came with the creative pits of Tony's Raphael Saadiq, who'd gifted D'Angelo with Lady that he'd been sitting on for 6 years prior to handing it over. When Raphael's manager called the tune non-hit worthy, Raphael said bet, and unintentionally, yet intentionally, seeked out a potential muse who could bring his art to life. What began as a weed session turned into a recording session for both Raphael and D'Angelo. Raphael worked on the chorus and arrangements with D'Angelo on, well, everything else. Lady would end up becoming D'Angelo's biggest hit to date, achieving number 10 on Billboard's Hot 100. Receiving a Grammy nom for Best Male R&B Vocal Performance, Lady would be sampled years down the road by heavyweight artists like Drake, who'd sample the song for his closing track on his 2018 album Scorpion. Without even knowing it, D'Angelo brought in the movement described as neo-soul, which was, unbeknownst to him, really originated from Raphael Saadiq and his penmanship. D'Angelo was in his own land, needling and crafting his music, and although he beheld as the king of neo-soul was something he wanted no parts of. For him, he was an artist first, and didn't want to ever limit his artistry by putting a name on his craft. In other words, I am what I am. Well, to us, it is what it is. Mojo went on to rank the album at number 97 on its 100 Modern Classics list, and Rolling Stones included Brown Sugar on its list of essential recordings of the 90s, as well as listed at number 183 on their list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. Brown Sugar's album cover gave 70s Marvin Gaye vintage tease, but unfortunately, similar to the 20-year period between the eras of Marvin and D'Angelo, a 4.5-year hiatus from the music scene had been D'Angelo's next move. After spending 2 whole years on tour promoting his albums, he'd soon be hit with the inconvenience of writer's block. But despite the creative block, he still went on to collaborate with the industry's top tiers, like Lauryn Hill for her debut solo album. The fans were left dehydrated, wondering where their favorite rugged soul singer had gone. Alas, in the year 2000, Angelo released his follow-up album, Voodoo, via Virgin Records. Lady may have been his biggest hit, but Voodoo went on to do big numbers, debuting at number 1 on the Billboard 200's chart, selling 320,000 copies in its first week, and remained on the charts for 3 consecutive weeks. Behold the album's third single, Untitled. How does it feel? Lead with what you may consider the infamous video, where the nudiful D'Angelo appeared to be in a distress, looking every bit of glazed, which helped propel the song itself onto the Hot 100 chart, picking up number 25, as well as number 2 on the R&B singles chart. Raphael Saadiq would again be the mastermind behind D'Angelo's cultural hits, coming up with Untitled in as little as 2 hours. A prime example of creativity at work, the Untitled title came about after the tape they'd used to record the track ran out, leaving the tapes that had already been named Untitled just that. The music video alone went on to receive numerous awards, and although it's been parodied and deemed the ultimate head-assery, its impression on the music world would last for years to come. Beyonce herself sampled the song for her own song, Rocket. D'Angelo was at the height of his reign. The once shy teen who left with nothing more than a few dollars and a dream was now a full-time sex symbol, being praised by the media. This is what D'Angelo wanted, so he thought. Once Voodoo was dropped and milked for all of its gems, he bounced away from the spotlight and wouldn't be seen for the next 14 years. Although this wouldn't be the first time an artist completely dropped off the face of the earth at the height of their peak relevancy, his sudden disappearance left a hole in the hearts of many. While people were playing his music on heavy rotation, D'Angelo was rotating heavily out of everyone's view. Making music was his passion, but the fame that came along with it on top of the press just wasn't it. Combined with him not being so well adjusted to his new sexy status, his personal life would also take a hit. Specifically in the year 2005, when he and the mother of his son, Angie Stone, had split. His attorney was now displeased with him, and he was more reckless than Ray Charles driving a speedboat. His favorite brown sugar, Mary Jane, had gotten him into some legal troubles as well as some of that white sugar. Mugshots of D'Angelo looking far long gone from his Untitled days had surfaced, and he'd even been involved in a car accident with suspicions of a DUI. It seemed as though we were never getting another D'Angelo-built masterpiece, but long and behold, in the year 2014, his third studio album, Black Messiah, would finally free from the shackles of his archives. Initially wanting to release it in 2015, due to the controversial injustices happening at the time, he decided against it, instead pulling a 2013 Beyoncé, gifting fans his unpromoted project without warning. Black Messiah was met with critically acclaimed reviews, ultimately debuting at number 5. During the time when digital streams and downloading were on the rise, this third album was able to sell over 100,000 copies in its first week and another 40,000 in its second. Compared to sales artists make nowadays, this was huge for any artist, let alone an artist who had completely vanished from the spotlight without a trace for nearly 2 decades. A tour soon followed Black Messiah's release, the Second Coming Tour, with a total of 57 shows across Asia, Europe, and North America. The fan base was strong, pulling in yet another Grammy, its 58th annual show, winning Best R&B Album, while his single, Really Love, won Best R&B Song and was even nominated for Record of the Year. A lover of video games, in the year 2018, he lent his vocals to the Red Dead Redemption 2 for the song Unshaken. The following year, he teased an upcoming 4th album during a Q&A with Billboard, and in 2021, he'd perform at the Tribeca Film Festival and came out of hiding once again, this time with a full circle moment performing at the Apollo Theater in cooperation with producers Timbaland and Swiss Beats for their quarantine co-creation Versus, a one-man show billed D'Angelo vs. Friends that featured no other opponents but instead consisted of a solo set with shared performances with his fellow peers and collaborators. In a day and age where talent seems to be put on the back end in favor of palatability and gimmicks, D'Angelo's showmanship paired with his unique taste for music and an ear for a hit made him a standout during a time where the soul of R&B had been left for dead back in the 80s. He'd be credited for pushing the sound into the mainstream, but birthing an entire subgenre known as neo-soul wasn't something he had been striving for. According to D'Angelo himself, the beloved genre was nothing more than a marketing tactic, which he'd often shun. Once you put a name on something, you put it in a box. You want to be in a position where you can grow as an artist. You never want to be told, you're a neo-soul artist. Why don't you do neo-soul? I never claimed neo-soul. When I came out, I said, I make black music. After the release of his OG debut, Brown Sugar, D'Angelo lost all enthusiasm for fame, stating how he could have done without going to a 7-Eleven at 3 a.m. to get a pack of cigarettes just to find himself swarmed and signing autographs. At that point, he had to take a step back to reevaluate why he was doing what he was doing in the first place. Well, for the love of music, something he'd be doing no matter the circumstance. Even if I didn't do this, I'd still be messing with the music. So I'm cursed, and I'm gonna be cursed till the day I die. So this is what I'm gonna do. D'Angelo's Brown Sugar opened doors for others who'd partake in the neo-soul sound and beyond. From veterans like Erykah Badu to newer comers like Ari Lennox, the epitome of a true artist who quite literally did it all. He'd play nearly every instrument heard on his albums, as well as write, produce, and had all the musical ability to captivate, tune, and perfect a sound that has gone on to evolve in more ways than one could have ever imagined. Brown Sugar was impactful due to the music. D'Angelo, however, was even more impactful due to his ability to do it all. A man of many talents, Brown Sugar was the blueprint to the neo explosion that was popularized by a Prince-inspired one-man band, D'Angelo, whether he intended to do so or not. Do you think D'Angelo gets the recognition he deserves? Let us know your thoughts and opinions down below, and stay tuned for more true celebrity stories.